Hello, my name is Amy White. For this week's discussion thread, Historical Newspapers, we are going to examine 3 newspaper articles that were printed in the first few days of the Rwandan genocide to delve into what information the international community had at that time. Newspaper articles can be useful sources in research as a primary source, demonstrating the views of the people who were there when the event occurred, or as a secondary source in newspaper articles that provide commentaries or retrospective information of the events. An important aspect of the Rwandan genocide and subsequent stalling of action from the international community in terms of both action and diplomacy has often been blamed or attributed to the lack of information available to foreign leaders and organizations at the outbreak of the violence. So we will be looking at 3 newspaper articles acquired from the JFL Library ProQuest Historical Newspaper Database. In the article, Rwanda racked by ethnic violence, rampage follows president's assassination, that appeared in the Washington Post on April the 8th, 1994, just one day after the violence began, Keith Richburg describes the chaos on the ground of both military and civilians attacking people on the streets of the capital in the wake of the unconfirmed assassination of the Hutu president, and also indicating the ethnic upheaval as Hutus were attacking Tutsis, blaming them for the assassination. Richburg depicts roaming youths on the streets and armed with knives and machetes, and reports the killing of the Prime Minister, 11 UN peacekeepers, and 17 Catholic priests. He notates the violence to be a breakdown of the truce agreement of the Arusha Accords that had been struck earlier that past summer between the rebel group, the RPF, and the Hutu-led Rwandan government. The second article, Troops Rampage in Rwanda, Dead Set to Include Premier, appeared in the New York Times on April 8, 1994, written by William E. Schmidt. Schmidt's writing suggests a great deal of uncertainty at the time and reports on the assassination of the prime minister, cabinet members, and their family after they had been abducted from the UN compound and murdered by the presidential guard. Even Catholic clergy were now being targeted by the uprising. Schmidt notates that the violence had effectively cut off Rwanda from the outside world, where the only information was coming out on the radio, which was generally controlled by the Hutus, and intermittent telephone reports. The UN reports that the presidential guard had been the ones to begin the violence. It really started with the crash of the president's plane actually at his palace. The UN peacekeepers on the ground were unable to act given that their directive had been a peacekeeping mission, and they didn't have any power or authority to do anything other than keep the peace. The third and final article, Thousands Massacred in Rwanda, UN Factions Agree to Ceasefire, appeared in The Guardian on April the 9th, 1994, and was written by Lindsay Hilsum. Hilsum reports that after 2 days of violence, thousands of bodies were seen lying on the streets of the capital of Rwanda. At this point, the Belgian government attempts to create an international coalition to aid Rwanda. There were reports of a possible ceasefire, which we know never happened. The Vatican was reporting that they had 25 priests and nuns die in the violence. And here, Hilsum officially reports that the massacres taking place were viewed as acts of vengeance at the hands of the Hutus against Tutsis they believed responsible for the president's murder. Still, these reports were not steadfast. They were a lot of, oh, this is what I heard, and so forth. So the international community really was not sure if this was a separate instance or if it was a restart of the Civil War. What we know from these articles is the amount of information that we had was sketchy at best, and most sources of the information had been cut off, and those that did remain were Hutu controlled. We know that despite Belgium's enthusiasm, the rest of the world, including the United States, stepped back and said, hey, we need more information before we proceed to do anything. And meanwhile, the killing continued, with the estimated number of deaths reaching around 400,000 to just over 1 million. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Hope you guys have a great day.